In a computer system, a chipset is a set of electronic components in an integrated circuit that manages the data flow between the processor, memory and peripherals. It is usually found on the motherboard. Chipsets are usually designed to work with a specific family of microprocessors, because it controls communications between the processor and external devices. The chipset plays a crucial role in determining system performance. Computers. In computing, the term chipset commonly refers to a set of specialized chips on a computer's motherboard or an expansion card. In personal computers, the first chipset for the IBM PC-It of 1984 was the Neat chipset developed by Chipset Technologies for the Intel 80286 CPU. In home computers, game consoles and arcade game hardware of the 1980s and 1990s, the term chipset was used for the custom audio and graphics chips. Examples include the Commodore Amiga's original chipset or Sega's System 16 chipset. The term chipset often refers to a specific pair of chips on the motherboard, the North Bridge and the South Bridge. The North Bridge links the CPU to very high-speed devices, especially RAM and graphics controllers, and the South Bridge connects to lower-speed peripheral buses. In many modern chipsets, the South Bridge contains some on-chip integrated peripherals such as Ethernet, USB, and audio devices. Motherboards and the chipsets often come from different manufacturers. As of 2015, manufacturers of chipsets for x86 motherboards include AMD, Broadcom, Intel, Nvidia, Silicon Sulfide and VIA Technologies. Apple computers and Unix workstations have traditionally used custom-designed chipsets. Some server manufacturers also develop custom chipsets for the products. In the 1980s, Chipset Technologies pioneered the manufacturing of chipsets for PC-compatible computers. Computer systems produced since then often share commonly used chipsets, even across widely disparate computing specialties. For example, the NCR53C9X, a low-cost chipset implementing a SCSI interface to storage devices, can be found in Unix machines such as the MIPS Magnum, embedded devices, and personal computers. Move toward processor integration in PCs. Traditionally in x86 computers, the processor's primary connection to the rest of the machine is through the motherboard chipset's North Bridge. The North Bridge is directly responsible for communications with high-speed devices and conversely any system communication back to the processor. This connection between the processor and North Bridge is traditionally known as the front-side bus. Requests to resources not directly controlled by the North Bridge are offloaded to the South Bridge, with the North Bridge being an intermediary between the processor and the South Bridge. The South Bridge traditionally handles everything else, generally lower-speed peripherals and board functions such as USB, parallel and serial communications. The connection between the North Bridge and South Bridge does not have a common name, but is usually a high-speed interconnect proprietary to the chipset vendor. Before 2003, any interaction between a CPU and main memory or an expansion device such as a graphics card, whether AGP, PCI or integrated into the motherboard, was directly controlled by the North Bridge IC on behalf of the processor. This made processor performance highly dependent on the system chipset, especially the North Bridge's memory performance and ability to shuttle this information back to the processor. In 2003, however, AMD's introduction of the Athlon 64-bit series of processors changed this. this. The Athlon 64 marked the introduction of an integrated memory controller being incorporated into the processor itself, thus allowing the processor to directly access and handle memory, negating the need for a traditional North bridge to do so. Intel followed suit in 2008 with the release of its Core i-series CPUs and the x58 platform. In newer processors, integration has further increased, primarily inclusion of the system's primary PCIe controller and integrated graphics directly on the CPU itself, as fewer functions are left unhandled by the processor. Chipset vendors have condensed the remaining North Bridge and South Bridge functions into a single chip. Intel's version of this is the Platform Controller Hub, effectively an enhanced South Bridge for the remaining peripherals, as traditional North Bridge duties, such as memory controller, expansion bus interface, and even on-board video controller, are integrated into the CPU itself. However, the Platform Controller Hub was also integrated into the processor for certain models of Intel's Skylake processors.